one, you have it. Yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
We are in for a wonderful evening of davening, of studying, of cheesecake. I promise there's cheesecake at the end of all of this, and maybe in the middle too. But to welcome Shavuot, we begin with the lighting of the festival candles on page 384. And we continue on page 389 at the top of the page. Together, now summer's prospect, the world ripening and growing softer, the promise of harvest fulfilled, the warming sun lies before us. Now the vision of Torah, the world at peace and growing gentler, the promise of goodness fulfilled, the loving heart lies open to the mind. Page 394, please rise. We continue together in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim, u'v'tvuna mishnei itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'musader et hakochavim, b'mishmoroteim barakia kirtono, orei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech,
Uma'avir yom u'mevin layla, umavdil ben yom u'vein layla, Adonai teva'ot shemo, El chai v'kayam tamid, Yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv aravim.
How do we find God? We find God revealed in the order of the physical universe, in the compassion of the human heart, in the guiding wisdom of Torah.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, v'shofeinu v'koleinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvehem negeh yomam v'layla v'yatavatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
May be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird which cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. Hold fast to dreams.
Yai bye bye yai bye 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 ya bye 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 yai bye bye yai bye 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 ya bye 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 yai bye 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 ya bye 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 yai bye 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 Kutecha rovanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Miriam, zeli anu v'yameru. Adonai imo leolam va'ed. Adonai imo leolam va'ed. Adonai imo leolam va'ed. Adonai imo leolam va'ed. V'nemar kivad Adonai et Yaakov, ugehalo miad chazak mimenu, baruch ata Adonai, Ga Yisrael.
We continue together on page 412. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for Adonai had come down upon it in fire. Torah, given amidst fire, is compared to fire. Just as fire lives forever, so do the words of Torah live forever. When one draws near to fire, one is burned by it. When one moves away from the fire, one is chilled. On Shavuot, we warm ourselves by the light of Torah, our precious heritage.
Vayidaber Moshe et moadei Adonai el bnei Yisrael.
We continue with the festival Amidah, beginning on page 468. Please rise.
Adonai sefatai tita, uvia giteli latecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'konehei Hakol, V'zoher Chastei Avot Ve'imahot, U'mevid Emunah Livnei Bneihem, L'ma'an Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol Atah Rav Le'Hoshiach, Moriv Hatal, Mechokel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Milchamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umitro Melech, Melech Me'id, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lehakayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol.
Your might, O God, renews the earth with dewdrops of light and blessing. Let the earth be illuminated and blessed.
With dewdrops of joy and delight, let the earth rejoice and sing out.
With dewdrops of life and well-being, Let the earth be revived and improved.
With dewdrops of redemption, let the earth be
For blessing and not for curse. For life and not death. For abundance, not want.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. Page 479. One does not travel to Jerusalem, one returns. One ascends, the road taken by generations, the path of longing on the way to redemption. One brings rucksacks stuffed with memories to each mountain and each hill. In the cobbled white alleyways, one offers a blessing for memories of the past which have been renewed. One does not travel to Jerusalem, one returns. We continue silently. We continue with the Festival Kiddush on page 386. Please rise. 586 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula liotzer b'reshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo osamanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'kol aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim u'nishtachadim u'modim lifnei Melech malchei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
You may be seated. There are stars up above so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. For the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. We recall those who've died in the past 30 days. Robert Fanuel, father of Alicia Fanuel. Daniel Garrett, father of Carolyn Stark. Eric Bernstein, father of Mark Bernstein. And if there is anyone whom you are remembering tonight, I invite you to share their names with us now. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. We rise in sacred solidarity on page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma devra kureteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechom v'yomechom, v'chayeh d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman karev v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'alam umei umay. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitamam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kedusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom b'mroma, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru. Amen.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
You may be seated.
Change us.
Chag Sameach. We are so glad that you are all joining us this evening. We're going to have a little bit of a scene change for 4 minutes. We're going to invite you to return your sidurim back in the back, and then we are going to change. We'll share our bima a little bit, and then we'll be back to share what the evening has in store tonight. So 3 minutes, and then we'll be back. know Rabbi Kroloff? I don't know. Tamar? I'll say words and then we'll turn it over to you. We have 2 mics, so we'll just pass it and you just have to speak. You have to speak really into it. But make sure you speak right into the mic. Eat the mic. Yeah, there. Is that good? Hag Sameach again. We're gonna. We have a packed evening, so we're so glad that you are joining us. Is that good? Do you know tomorrow? So it's wonderful to celebrate Shavuot with you. Thank you to Cantor Goldman and Rabbi Appel for leading our service this evening. If you came at 7 o'clock, we got in the spirit of how you celebrate Shavuot in Israel on Kibbutzim, a lot of Israeli dancing. We didn't have our tractors out. We didn't have our agricultural fairs, which they do, but maybe we'll do that next year. But we decided as Temple Emanu-El that last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Women in the Reform Rabbinate, and we had a wonderful panel. And we lucked out again with a big anniversary this year to connect Shavuot, which has a lot of connections to the land of Israel, which we will be exploring this evening as well, to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel. And we wanted to start off this evening with a panel conversation about Israel and Zionism that will be moderated by Rabbi Kroloff. And then there'll be a little cheesecake interlude. And then we have 2 evening sessions to study a little bit more this evening. If you want to stay up late, we'll be up to like 11-ish, 11:30. If we could go all night long if you want. But we look forward to. But also, we do have services tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock with Yisker here in the chapel as well. But thank you for joining us, and thank you to Rabbi Kroloff and our panelists, who Rabbi Kroloff will be introducing in a second. But thank you for moderating tonight's conversation.
My pleasure. Can you hear me? Yep, good. So I see a lot of the same faces that I saw last evening at that wonderful program. How many of you slept over last night? Yeah. It was a wonderful program. I hope we can equal it in our own way. Bruchim Habayim, welcome to all, and Chag Shavuot Sameach to you. So when I was a 12-year-old growing up in Atlanta, and when Terry was exactly the same age growing up in Jacksonville, we belonged to Young Judea, the premier Zionist youth organization of North America. And although I had joined Young Judea because my friends were there, that was the main reason, it instantly made me a pre-adolescent Zionist. And I pretty much knew what that meant then. I knew that European anti-Semitism had led my ancestors to conceive of a Jewish home where Jews would be safe. I knew that Theodor Herzl had laid the intellectual and organizational framework for Zionism in the 1890s. And I even knew as a kid that the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour had issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, declaring Britain's support for a national home for the Jewish people. And how many of you were in our sanctuary? This is going to date you. How many of you were in our sanctuary in 1967 when Israel was under siege and when 1,000 people gathered there, emptying their savings accounts? Some people did, actually, to support Israel. How many of you were there in 67? 1, 2, 3. Okay. You're young people. We all knew we were Zionists then, right? Today it's much more complicated. We have a Jewish state. I love the Jewish state dearly. Its achievements are awesome, but our beloved Jewish state also has problems. So we turn to our panelists to share their thinking this evening. What is Zionism today? What does it mean to you to be a Zionist today? And how do you put your Zionism into practice today? After their opening remarks, depending on whether or not they stick to the 5 to 6 minute, we'll have some time to exchange between us, or we'll go right to you. But I'm a great believer in involving everyone in discussions, so think of your questions and we'll be there for you. Quick introduction. Rabbi Eric Yaffe needs little intro. Eric, 40 years now, is that right? Can you believe that? 40 years in Westfield, member of our congregation? Isn't that beautiful? Yay, we've been, and my friend and buddy. But for the one or two of you who may not know, besides Emanu-El, Executive Director of Arts of the Association of Reformed Zionists of America, President of the URJ, Union for Reform Judaism, and currently, as far as I'm concerned, maybe not everybody would agree, but as far as I'm concerned, the leading columnist of Haaretz today, the great Israeli daily newspaper. Eric will speak first, followed by Tamar Reshef, our senior shlicha. What does shlicha mean? Shlicha? Yeah, emissary, right, emissary, representative at Jewish Federation Metro West, and we're thrilled that you're with us. Tamar has a bachelor's degree in community theater and education from Tel Aviv University and a master's in education. Where'd you get the master's? Also Tel Aviv? Oh, cool. The past 6 years, she's worked as the educational program coordinator in Chof HaCarmel Youth Department in the Haifa area, and Tamar lives with her family down the street in Springfield, right? And finally, Shimon Smith hardly needs, yay, Shimon. I'm a little angry, Shimon, a little unhappy, but love you. Fabulously successful here at Temple Emanu-El this year. You've been a blessing. You have been a blessing to us. When Shimon was a young child, his family made Aliyah to Israel, and he became one of the leading song leaders and cantorial soloists in Israel, especially working at the Daniel centers in Tel Aviv in the B'nai Mitzvah program there, and spiritual leader to numerous significant reform and progressive programs in Israel. He's still with us, but next year he will be at Romamu, which is a significant, but not all that important. No, a significant Jewish enterprise and congregation in New York City, and will be director of music and family education. So we lovingly wish you the best. With that, I'm going to turn to Eric.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Kroloff. You didn't mention my most important accomplishment, 40 years of Yom Kippur Israel Seminar. I'm going to speak for a text. They gave me 5 to 6 minutes. Usually I can barely clear my throat in 5 to 6 minutes. So that being the case, in order to we're off to a great start. Here we go. In order to provide some boundaries for myself, I'll use my text.
You have to hold it, Eric. I want them to hear every word.
You really can't hear me? To be a Zionist means to believe that the existence of a Jewish and democratic state in the land of Israel is essential for the physical survival of the Jewish people and for the thriving of Judaism and Jewish life. That is, Zionism is primarily about two things. First and foremost, it is about providing a refuge for Jews. There are 2.5 million Jews in Europe today, and not a single Jewish community there is truly secure. About 25,000 Ukrainians have arrived in Israel since the war began with Russia. Roughly the same number of French Jews have immigrated to Israel in the last 5 years. When the next crisis comes, who will take them in? America? Israel will take them in. There is no one else to rely on. The benefits of Jewish sovereignty have rarely been so apparent as they are today. But Zionism is also about something else. The Jewish people are entitled to one place on earth that provides an immersive Judaism. That is a public Judaism rooted in a majority culture. One place where Judaism belongs in the public realm, where Hebrew is the language of every day, where Shabbat and the festivals provide the rhythm of the calendar, and where the public square is dominated by Jewish arguments. There are other kinds of Judaism, to be sure, but only Israel can do this. Only there can we enjoy the benefits that majority status bestows. What's happening in Israel now? After the November election, Bibi Netanyahu formed a coalition with two radical religious settler parties and two nearly as radical ultra-Orthodox parties. The settler parties are led by what I've called, quote, rabble-rousing religious racists, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. They are Kahanists and Jewish supremacists, whose every deed, in the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, is a cancer of the soul. They should not be sitting in any government, and certainly not a Jewish-led one. As their price for joining Bibi's coalition, the settlers demanded massive settlement throughout the West Bank, and the ultra-Orthodox demanded, among other things, a permanent exemption for their young men from army service. Desperate to stay in power, Bibi agreed, and since the major obstacle was that both demands could be overruled by Israel's Supreme Court, Bibi also agreed to pass laws that would neuter the court. But then, the citizens of Israel rose up, protesting this grotesque attempt at a judicial coup. In a devastatingly effective mass uprising, they have filled the streets of Israel. Joining the demonstration are Israelis of every sort, including army reservists who said, "We will risk our lives for democracy, but not for autocracy." The protests, held weekly for about 5 months now, bring the equivalent of 5 to 10 million Americans together every week. I am a proud Zionist, and never prouder than now. And where is my Zionism? It is in the streets with the protesters. In response to the protests, Netanyahu has paused his proposals, but not canceled them. And this battle, it should be said, is far from won. What then is our job? It is to offer our support, not to this government, but to the Israel that we and a majority of Israelis, I believe, want and pray for. A country that is committed to being a Jewish and democratic state, that believes in an independent judiciary, that is prepared to offer the Palestinians a political horizon, that embraces all Jews, whatever their movement or theology, that guarantees full civil rights to Israel's Arab citizens, and that demands an end to Haredi excesses and special privileges. Still, while governments come and go, the bottom line always is this: the right of the Jewish people to self-determination in its ancient homeland is one of the most moral causes of our time, and we defend it with pride. And we're not going to turn away from Israel, no matter what. We will not permit the Smotriches and the Ben-Gvirs of the world to take our Zionism from us. And we will not permit the ultra-Orthodox in Israel and elsewhere to define what Zionism is and what Judaism will become. And therefore, we will go on the moral offensive. When we deal with Israel, we will engage complexity and avoid whitewashing. We will be more assertive when Israel is right, but more honest when Israel is wrong. But our message will always be clear. Israel was created to achieve democracy, freedom, and justice in Zion reborn, and nothing will deter us from this goal. And we will do what Zionists have always done: join with Israel in rebuilding a sense of community, civility, and caring for its citizens, for its neighbors, and for the Jews of the world.
Eric, thank you so much for extraordinary statement. And we'll hear what they think about it. Beautiful. Tamar, we welcome you and look forward to hearing from you.
So when I was invited here and I heard that the theme is going to be Zionism, I thought, oh, they are doing a long Tikkun Shavuot, because it's a subject that you can't just define in one sentence or a few pages. But I think that for me, Zionism is something that I keep defining. I think that when I grew up in Israel and I was born in Sfat, I grew up in not an Orthodox family, but a Masorti family, which means that my grandparents kept Shabbat. They were observant. I heard the stories of their Aliyah. Both sides came from Tunisia to Israel. I heard the passion from Israel from both sides, how they eagered for Israel all the time. My grandfather used to tell me about his Aliyah when he was a teenager to Israel, and I'm like, Saba, not those stories again. But this is how I grew up. This is like Israel. This is the most important thing for us as Jews in the world. And this is a place where everything that has happened in it, we need to defend, we need to protect, and we need to love. And then I grew up. And I went to the army. And first of all, while growing up, I lost my father in one of the Israeli wars. I learned that two of my an uncle and an aunt, were killed in a terror attack. In one of the most hideous one that were in Ma'alot. They were in a field trip, and terror attackers just came and attacked them, and they were dead. And then I'm starting to understand that Israel is a complex place to live at. That a lot of people are arguing about its existence. I refuse to become a person who grows up in a victim kind of thinking, that everybody's chasing us and the world hates us. And I started to explore what is Zionist, why me being a Zionist mean. And I figured that first and foremost, as Eric said before, is the right of a Jewish state to have this place for all the Jews in the world. But on the other hand, not just to defend Israel blindly, but also to be brave enough to ask the questions that needs to be asked. And sometimes those hard questions that you want to understand. Why are we still in war with the country that's right next to us? The last operation that was in Israel, to me, it was very cynical to look outside. And coming from Israel and being somewhat of a representative of the country, I was very upset that they started this operation because it felt like it had more political reasons than security reasons to the country. And those are things that when you grow up in Israel, you understand that in one hand, yes, you need to have the passion in defending this country and to make it. And I think that if the other part of the question was, what am I doing for Zionism today? I think that me coming here with my family is a big part of what we're doing as Zionists today. I'm making Israel more accessible for people. I talk about Israel with people with a lot of love and passion, but I do dare to have hard conversations about Israel and to answer questions with fact. My kids that go to public schools in Springfield, New Jersey, they speak about Israel because that's the place they know, and they speak about it with love, and they're proud to share the things that they know about the country, and they're proud to share the story of our family and to bring the tradition. My son, it was a funny story. They had this week when they learned about immigrants in their school, and because he told a really wonderful story about Israel, they told him that the whole week is going to be about Israel. And one of the kids got to bring food, Israeli food, to school. So my son suggested to him, maybe bring falafel, or maybe you can make some kind of a dish that comes from here or that. And the other kid brought bagels and lax to school. And my son they didn't understand anything. That's Jewish, that's not Israeli. I was like, okay, so now you got something. So I do think that the most active thing for me as a Zionist would be to speak about Israel, but openly, to really be brave enough to answer hard questions, to look at the truth in the eyes. Sometimes it's really unpleasant. And to take the responsibility on it in one hand, make the country more accessible, not to try to hide things. I think that what created the biggest problem. That for some time, when teenager was spoken about Israel or talked about Israel, it would be, oh, there's like cherry tomatoes in Israel, and it's a really high-tech country. But they weren't exposed enough to the issues that are there. So when they came to Israel or when they came to college, they heard that there's some other issues that are harder, and that was difficult for them. That a lot of parents said that they excused them. They told them, why were you lying to us the whole time? Why did you hide that part of Israel from us? And that was hard for them to deal when they came to college, and people started to bring some facts towards them and say, oh, Israel is doing this and Israel doing that. And they couldn't defend themselves or Israel. So they just decided to hide their Jewish identity and to hide their connection to Israel whatsoever. I feel like just being open about Israel, making Israel accessible, being proud of Israel for what it is and what it's not Israel, not to be detached from it, but really be invested in the things that we see as a change in it. If I believe in pluralism in Israel, I would do anything that I can in my power to go to Israel and to talk about it and to show other ways. I feel like as an emissary that goes back to Israel, that would be my most important work. To tell the Israelis what I learned here, and I'm sure that they don't know it. I think Shimon would agree with me about that. I don't think that Israelis know enough about Jewry, like Jewish people outside of the country, because they're so aware of what's happening in Israel, and they're so in that Israeli bubble. Only when you zoom out a little bit, you understand how invested Jewish people are in Israel outside of it. So I feel like being a Zionist today, that's the main thing, to make Israel accessible to other people openly and bravely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Shimon?
Hi, everybody. So how do you know I'm a modern Zionist? I'll start with a little story. So the other day, my 20-month-old daughter came home from the ECE here. She came home with a different pair of pants, and we were like, why did she have a new pair of pants? And so we looked in the daily sheet, and it said, switched her pants because of the hummus. That's what it said. Because I packed her hummus that day, and she loves hummus, and she got it all over her pants. Things that are important to me. So we moved to Israel when I was 5 from New Jersey. We lived in Hoboken. And why did we move to Israel? My parents were not religious. They weren't, I wouldn't say that we were avid Zionists. My mother lives in Rehovot until this day in Israel. One reason was because my mother's sister lived in Israel in the Shtachim, in the territories, in a place called Neve Tzuf. And so one of the places I grew up in was going to a little town in the middle of the territories. I remember not thinking too much about it, but later realizing that this is pretty crazy because we were driving like in places where people were being shot at from time to time, or stones being thrown at them. But I grew up going there a lot and lived in Tel Aviv for the past 12, 13 years. And so to me, when I think about what it means to be a modern Zionist, it means getting personal. So it means to get personal about Israel, and to get personal about the fact that there's no such thing as a good guy and a bad guy. And I think that in 67, which when I think about it, Like it wasn't that long before I was born. 67, so it's the same as if I would talk about something in the 90s today. It's not that long ago. And in 67, and even in the 90s, and even 15 years ago, it was a little bit simpler. It was a little bit easier to look at things. We would look at things maybe black and white. I remember in 07, 08, I was a shaliach. I was a young emissary after the army. I went to be a shaliach. And I remember the way they told us to talk about Israel. So they spoke about when you talk about Israel, you talk about the good things about Israel, and you talk about the irrigation system, and you talk about how all these wonderful inventions that were being made. And then what happens is what Tamar was talking about, where kids grow up and they're having a lot of problems these days with connecting to Israel and with their personal connection, because they feel like either they've been lied to because, wait a minute, I didn't hear about all this other stuff going on, or they don't know what to latch onto. I'm thinking about one of the things I thought about when I was thinking what I would say is Game of Thrones, and I'll tell you why. Because Game of Thrones made some sort of like switch in TV, because it made you, if you watch Game of Thrones, it made you look at people who would be considered bad guys and sort of connect with them in a way and say, oh wait, I can connect. People are much rounder than just black and white. They're actually human beings, and in Israel, my connection to Zionism came a lot came when I grew older, and when I realized that here are the different things that I love about Israel, and that they're not perfect. And I really love the fact that it's not perfect, and I love the fact that I can find a connection. And I was also very lucky, because my parents, when we moved to Israel, they were looking for where we can be pluralistic Jews. So they were American, and they were looking, where can we do this? So when we lived in Rehovot, my parents looked for the Reform or Conservative congregation. I didn't have a Reform congregation at the time, so I grew up in a conservative congregation, and that's where I had my bar mitzvah. And when all my friends would find their Orthodox community that was down the street and do their bar mitzvah, I was having a bar mitzvah in a place that was a little bit farther from my apartment, but I would go there all the time. Like, I would go there every Friday, and I would start being like a little chazan there. It wasn't so little, but I would start being a chazan there, and I would start, doing things, because I found a lot of interest in it, and a lot of things. I found my people there, and to me, this is where it needs to be taken, because what happens when a dream that people had for many, many years comes true, and then jumps 75 years later? What happens then? So what happens is you have to find a new narrative. You have to find a new way of connection. How do you connect? You connect through the people. That's how I connect. I connect by disagreeing. I connect by understanding that it's not perfect. It's far from perfect. There's a lot of work to be done. How do I find what work to be done? By finding my people, by finding who are the people that I connect with their ideas. I'm going to make it really easy for you. We're the Reform movement. This is the Reform movement. There is a strong Reform movement in Israel, an Israeli Reform movement. Is there any more my people than that? Is there any more my people than finding the Israeli Reform movement or the Israeli conservative movement and saying, how can I find a connection to that? How can I be part of that? Because right now there is thanks to these protests, there is an amazing pluralistic insurgence. I don't know the word I'm looking for.
It's like
An awakening. And people are telling me, my friends in the Reform movement in Israel are telling me that services are fuller than ever. They're having like these great services in the Yarkon that we used to do, and they are off the charts. And that is a wonderful thing, because it means that people can find a way to be Jewish without it having them shoved down their throats, which happened to my friends when they were little.
But I think it's even like it's even stronger than that, because I think that I feel like this is the first time where Israelis actually are dealing with their identity. Because when you're in Israel, you don't wake up and you say, what type of a Jew I am today? Am I a Reform Jew? Am I conservative? You just wake up and you're in a Jewish country, and it's much easier on you to understand that. So you deal with other things. And I think that this situation kind of like created this blessing in disguise, where people are actually trying to understand what is their identity in that country. And that's a beautiful thing that's happening. It's happening in a very hard, sometimes way, but I feel like that's one of the biggest blessings that we're getting from that situation now in Israel.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
for sharing that, Shimon. Thank you for your very for your very personal experiences, and Tamar, your reflection on that is very enlightening. I'm tempted to ask our panelists to go back and forth, but I'm going to resist that temptation and go right to you all. We might have some time at the end for a little back and forth or summing up. But I'm a great believer in bringing you all in. As I said, some of you have been here for 24 hours, so you are entitled to speak your mind. So responses, questions, comments, responses, eager to hear from you, and keep them as brief as possible.
My girlfriend and I went to Israel in October. I think from Federation West Orange and Northfield Avenue. And I'm very excited. And at the same time, for a variety of reasons, I got mixed feelings. And I saw this at the video, you mentioned Petra Jordan. And among other places that this is my third time there. My girlfriend Sabbath is her first time there.
Good that you're going. Good that you're going. Wonderful that you're going.
I just want to mention,
Yep.
every time you bat an eyelash, something different is going on in Israel. One of the things I remember years ago, and I'm not trying to put Israel down by any stretch of the imagination, a number of years ago, the Russian Jews who emigrated to Israel, and for some strange reason, I guess they were very overwhelmed by their different, the culture. Where did they go? Germany. And Germany, I think Berlin, they have
Okay. So yeah, if I could just bring that to the focus here. What does it mean, and is it at all significant that some Israelis leave and some leave for Germany and others? What's the significance of that? Let's keep that in mind as we're going to get other responses and other comments. I'm going to just go to other sections of the. Well, I'll come back to you, but I want to give other parts. Yes.
So my question is why? I mean, from Rabbi Yafi, how did Netanyahu get this coalition? How did the voters come out and not understand what they were voting for? I think I'm hearing a little bit of the answer from Gemara and Shimon, is that the Reform conservative Jews probably didn't vote, probably didn't understand how important it was. But how did this happen? Was it all fear?
Okay, I'm gonna take one more comment, and then we're going to kind of respond to these, and then we'll take other groups. I think that might be interesting. Please.
Rabbi Yafi pointed out that Israel is a democratic and Jewish state. And then we just heard another comment that said, well, maybe if they don't vote the way we like, but they're still a democratic state. And that's what I can't get my head around. They had an election. There was no secret as to what Netanyahu's platform and his people were, and the Israelis voted for them. And so isn't that what democracy is supposed to be?
Fair question. Fair question. Let's get some responses. Who would like to grab hold? Shimon?
I'll ask you a question. How did 2016 happen? I mean, that's my first question. That's the first question that comes to my mind, because America is a democracy. America is a democracy, and Israel is also a democracy, and both democracies are very much dysfunctional. However, they're still a democracy, right? But there's a lot of consequences, right? There's a lot of consequences. Here, we're still suffering those, and in Israel, they're still suffering those consequences. But there's consequence to everything, right? So I'm not even going to get into that too much. But this was, I think this was a wake-up call. I don't know if it'll make an effect in the next election, because we've had like all these elections that are, year after year, sometimes twice a year. That just shows that there's really something not working with the elections. But yeah, there are many people who have their priorities different, and that's okay. And that's okay.
And I
Yeah.
don't think that the people that did vote for this government were thinking that this is where it's headed. That wasn't the thing on their campaign. Like, nobody knew that they're going to do this. Please help me with that word. Judicial. Judicial reform is something that was even on the agenda. It was something that was hidden. Yes, it was discussed. Yes, the Supreme Court had its problem. Nobody's saying that the change is something that wasn't needed, but not in that way. It feels like somebody kind of like kidnapped the country in a way, and the way that things are happening, the pace of them. Things are like every day you hear about another crazy idea that comes to the news in order for people to, this is the new law now, and this is what they're trying to do now. So I feel like the effect of it kind of like made people, even the people who voted for that government, ask themselves, this is not what I voted for. Some people voted for a right wing, and I'm not saying even that this situation is left and right, but I'm saying that people who voted for Ben Gvir or Netanyahu sometimes voted because they thought, finally we're going to have a right wing government that will bring us security, that will keep us safe. That's not the situation. I mean, since this government started, there have been, I think, 14 women that were murdered. There were terror attacks. There was an operation already. Like, it doesn't prove to be the right government that people voted for. So it's gonna contradict itself. And one last thing, and then I'm gonna shut up.
Okay. You're doing fine.
And I don't think also that even if it was, I don't think that a government that was chosen has the right to destroy everything that was established so far. And that's the feeling that most of the people in the street walk with. And that's like the depressing side of it. When you're talking to elderly, like I talked to my mother-in-law this afternoon to say Chag Sameach, you feel like people are sad. This is something that it's not like just in the news, and they are going to protest every Saturday night. My sister is on the other side. My sister doesn't believe in the protest, but she says, I'm so confused I don't even know what's good for us as a country anymore.
Thank you. Very much. Eric?
The issue isn't whether or not Israel is a democracy, because it is. There's no question about that, just as our country is a democracy as well. The issue is, I believe the question you're asking is, what is our right to speak up and to speak against policies that apparently were democratically decided? So my first answer to that is Israel is a Jewish state. And as a Jewish state, that means it's a state of the Jewish people. So any committed Jew anywhere in the world has a right to speak up about the issues that involve Israel. It's an absolute right. I don't have to ask permission. I don't have to apologize for it. If I'm committed Jew, if I embrace Judaism, if I care about Israel, that's the whole point of the Zionist enterprise. I don't get to decide. Israelis get to decide, including Israeli Arabs, who come before me because they get the vote and I don't. But I don't have to ask anyone about speaking up because that is part of the Zionist game. Otherwise, Zionism means nothing. And second point, just to follow up on what Tamara said, I don't believe, this notion that everybody knew. Everybody didn't know. Everybody didn't know. When Netanyahu first put his government together, he announced 4 different principles on which his new coalition would be based. The judicial plan wasn't on the list. It wasn't on the list. And those people who somehow suggest, well, this is democratically supported by the people of Israel, I say nonsense. My answer is, let's have a referendum. Let's have a referendum on whether or not yeshiva students should be exempted from the army. Let's have a referendum on whether or not yeshivas should get additional subsidies. Let's have a referendum on whether the ultra-Orthodox should be exempted from studying science and math in the school system. Or for that matter, Smotrich just announced that it's going to double the number of settlers. Double it. An additional 500,000. Let's have a referendum on that. I'm willing to bow to the will of the people. I don't think on a single one of those issues. Not one. Let's keep it. What's the tragedy here? We don't have time to get into this. One final point. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and their parties got 11% of the vote. Too much. Distresses me. Having said that, look at the far right-wing parties in Europe, which get 30% and 35% and 40%. 11%, troubling, not so bad. But Israel's unique form of government and its parliamentary system and its negotiating over majorities and so on and so forth, it gives leverage to small parties, which simply do not represent the will of the broader majority. That needs to be addressed. It's a profound issue and it needs to be addressed. In the meantime, we have to do what we can to correct those things that we can correct.
We've got some pretty good responses, robust responses to your excellent questions. I would just add as a PS to what Shimon said, was January 6th on the agenda for the elections of 2016. And I know a lot of people who supported, voted for Trump, who were devastated by what happened. Devastated. Pretty good comparison. Let's open up to some more comments, please. 1, 2, okay, yeah, please. Dan.
We always talk about Israel being a democracy, but when we define democracy, we talk about Israelis. And so there's a huge base of population in the occupied territories that are disenfranchised. And we'd like to have a separate Palestinian state with secure borders, but we don't have that. So if that time doesn't come to fruition, will we ultimately provide democratic principles to everybody living in the territories as well?
Important and tough question. Thank you for asking, Mark. Yeah.
I want to stand here so people can hear me.
Okay.
I just came back from my 18th trip to Israel.
Would you repeat that? How many times?
My 18th, my high time in Israel.
Very impressive.
And I've been going many years. I went with the temple here. This last trip was with National Hadassah. And the people on the trip were not all Jews, but they were Zionists. And I met people from all over. And my concern is when I hear all this, because I know what's going on in our country, that someone said to me, don't listen to the news, you only hear the bad things. You don't hear the good things about Israel. It's so wonderful. I mean, it was unbelievable. We were 18 people on a trip. It was a wine, dine, and celebrate tour from National Hadassah, from the Associates. And we went to a Druze woman's home for dinner. We met people from Japan, from Spain, from all over who said that you have moved to Israel and what a wonderful country, the technology. We were at Hadassah Hospital, and
and we saw people treated brown, blue, green, and all kinds of people, and they didn't have to be um, Jewish to be taken care of. And my concern is we don't hear, in the United States, we don't hear the good news about Israel. Because really, I'm not I don't carry a gun or, you know, I'm more frightened to drive in New Jersey
So
down this road with the traffic.
so your comment is very much they're sort of the other side of the territories question. So we're going to deal with both of those.
Okay,
Thank you.
But the thing is, I would like to see more of the.
Got it.
In other words, I meet people who say they're going on their 7th trip. They're going to Australia. Have you been to Israel yet?
Okay.
Oh no, I wouldn't go to Israel. But it is wonderful. If I could show
Thank
you
you.
pictures.
But another time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't
Okay.
been to Australia yet. I'd like to go to Australia.
You should go 6 times. I've been twice. The bad news, good news piece, and yeah, and that's the good news, and democracy in the territories.
I'll go for the good news. I would say that, right?
Use the mic, please.
Okay. Do you hear me now? Most of the discussions that we are making is the current situation in Israel, because it is a huge thing, an historical thing. But yes, life still go on in Israel and people live them. The last time that I was in Israel was last January, and I was there with a group of people that we call it peoplehood. What Shimon said about finding my people, finding my crowd, finding the relationship, creating this thing, make Israel personal for people. We have a cohort in Israel that come from our partnership cities. It's Arad, Ofakim, Merchavim. Those are all, the partnership is basically around Gaza. They're very close to the border there. Every time there's alarms, there are the places that are being attacked. But they still love those places, and they're staying there for Zion, for their reasons. Like they love the atmosphere there, the kibbutzim there. They're not gonna leave there. We had a cohort from those places, and we had a cohort from New Jersey. When we went to Israel, the New Jersey cohort stayed at their homes. They saw how Israelis live. One of them got to go to a Shabbat service because they were with an Orthodox family. One of them was very frustrated because she was never by a synagogue, and she really wanted to experience that. But she was at a secular family that, in our terms, sometimes people would say that's not a secular family because they do celebrate this and they do that. The definitions are very different between here and Israel. But what I'm saying is, again, once you make this connection a personal thing, we have a group of young emissaries here, like 18-year-old boys and girls, Rishonim, not birthright, Rishonim, kids that are coming to this community for a year.
They were at the concert.
Yeah, they were at David Rosa
concert a few weeks ago.
They're coming for to this community for a year to volunteer before the army, right after high school. And again, they're staying at people's homes. They're creating those relationships. Those families last forever. The connection between the two families.
This is a very strong theme that we're hearing about personal relationship.
Exactly.
And I'd like to also emphasize beyond the Federation connections, Shimon's comments about our reform movement, and we've got 55 synagogues, communities, and they are eager for that connection. And before our time runs out, I want to deal with the shtakim, the territories, and the issue of democracy.
First of all, I'll second everything that was just said. I've been to Israel about 75 times.
Every year, since it was existed.
And so Israel can't only be a cause, it needs to be a place. And it ceases to be a place if we're involved in, the politics all the time. From here, we lose connection with what's real about Israel. And we lose also interest in it, engaging ourselves with what's really important. So, go. And B, there are also things we need to do. We need to be supporting our reform movement. We need to be supporting democracy in Israel. And we need to be insisting that our organizations here share these concerns. Our federation has to be doing more than it's doing. In order to promote pluralism and democracy. Okay. Now let's come to territories. There's no denying the crisis of the issue of territories. And that for the very simple reason, if nothing is done long term, Israel won't be a democracy anymore. Permanent occupation means that Israel will not be a democracy. And it will be faced with the choice between an apartheid state on one hand or a binational state on the other. And that is not the Jewish and democratic state that Zionism is about. Now, what is it that can be done? We don't have time here to resolve that. Let me say, first of all, no illusions about the other side. I'm a Zionist, I'm a realist, I'm honest about our problems. On the other hand, I look at the other side and I recognize to say that they haven't done what they need to do in order to end this problem is the great understatement of the universe. I will not patronize the Palestinians. They have the same moral responsibilities that all human beings have, period. No more terror. No more terror. But what about us? What about us? We're not going to create a state tomorrow. We're not going to solve the problem tomorrow. But there are things that we can do. I believe that settlement outside of the major settlement blocks is lunacy. Is that clear enough? I believe that it's lunacy. I believe that for the finance minister of the state of Israel is to say he's going to pay for 500,000 additional settlers is lunacy. We need to work towards separation, and we need to work, these are the words of Michael Oren, who put it very well. It's not my job to outline 15 different solutions. Everybody has a solution. Isn't that interesting? I don't know what the solution is, but this much I'll tell you. There needs to be a political horizon for the Palestinians. They need to feel that there's a way for the more moderate ones among them to go if there's going to be any possibility of getting out of that. Right now, if I were a Palestinian and I looked at the government of Israel, I don't know that I could think that I could believe that. If I were a Palestinian child and I looked at Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, what would I say? Our job is to push the Israelis. Our job is to push the American government to make sure that as things develop in whatever way, there will be a political horizon for the Palestinians so we can look for some way to end this occupation, which must ultimately end.
So I'm going to conclude with this appeal. First, a thank you, a big thank you to Shimon, to Tamar, to Eric. This was a great discussion. It could go on for another hour, and I think we would be the richer for it. But Rabbi Prosnit is the boss around here now. Took me a while to say that, but it's easy now. I love it. Actually, I love saying that. I love saying that. But here's what I want to leave you with. If this discussion stimulated you and got your juices flowing on some aspect, whether it's the Palestinian issue in the territories and the eloquent statement that Eric just made about the lunacy of these ideas that are now in the government, people who are visiting Canada and the United States and Europe, or the pluralism appeal that Shimon's been making since he arrived here, and I thank you for that. A very beautiful article that you wrote some months ago in Jewish News, right? Tamar's appeal to connect with the people. Connect with the people. If these concerns and appeals touch you, leave here tonight committed to finding some place that you where and some group of people with which you can connect. And if you need help with that, you got Rabbi Prosnit, you got Cantor Goldman, you've got Rabbi Appel, you've got Shimon for a few days. No, he's available. He's available. He's not. We're not going to let him get fully away from here, right? And you have Tamar, and you have Eric, and then if all that fails, you have me. Between us, we can connect you. We'll give you ideas. We'll give you a smorgasbord, a buffet, and you can choose. And if it's financial support, if it's moral support, if it's person-to-person support, or all of them together, find your place, make that connection, and I think that is a big part of what Zionism is today. So you have an arsenal of experts who are available, and I hope you will leave here, if you're not already connected, and some of you are intimately and strongly connected with causes and concerns. Being a Reform synagogue, we have a very special relationship with our movement. I'll put that in, but everything else that is related here, whether it's this effort through Federation, whether it's J Street or other areas, find your place. And wouldn't that be a wonderful conclusion to this exceptional conversation? Thank you all so much.
Thank you. This coming Thursday, I actually will be on a panel organized by Federation, and the people in the congregation will be MKs from the current coalition, and I will share my voice about the importance that we heard here tonight. And if you have any things that you want to say to some of the MKs, the members of Knesset, I will share your voices as well. It's organized by Federation, a Reconstructionist rabbi, conservative and Orthodox rabbi from Federation, and they will be joining us through Jewish Federation. So, Rabbi Yaffe, I might have a side conversation with you as well. I'll show you some of the MKs which are concerning.
If I could just add, kol hakavod to Federation and kol hakavod to Rabbi Prosnit that he's part of that panel. That's a great tribute, and it's a tribute to this congregation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and we have over probably 60 members of our congregation going to Israel on July 2nd, so which will be wonderful, and we're looking forward to that as well. Tonight continues with some cheesecake outside. Please join us for some cheesecake. And then at 9:20, we have our first set of classes, Israeli music through the decades with Cantor Goldman and Shimon Smith in the library. And then the Israel and Reform Judaism platforms through the Israel and Reform Jewish platforms through the ages with Rabbi Appel and Greifer Sachs. Oh, we're going to go to Greifer Sachs. We'll keep everyone up here. And that's till about 10:05, and then we'll have more cheesecake, and then you can study with me talking about which Zionist thinker are you, delving deeper into this conversation that we had tonight, looking at some text, as well as with Rabbi Charles Leitner, what is Israel? A geographic entity, a political entity, a covenantal entity, or a spiritual entity? We'll be having those conversations as well. We'll finish by 11-ish, and then we'll be back here in the morning at 10 o'clock. But we'll make some more announcements. But enjoy the cheesecake, and thank you very much for kicking us off tonight.